Hey everybody, how you doing, Suzanne?
I'm terrific. How are you?
Good. Okay. Yep, there's just a notification that now X Twitter is now you have to have a premium account to go live. So I'll have to make a note to remove that from my desktop.
Yes, move it from the list. God, I haven't been on Twitter in ages.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Remove X Twitter from StreamYard. Okay. So yeah, people starting to come in. So welcome everybody. Let us know where you are watching from. Pretty warm where you are, right, Suzanne?
Yes, it's probably 115 today. Hasn't quite got there yet, but it probably will by the end of the afternoon.
You're in Arizona, right?
Arizona, yeah.
Yep. And I'm in Los Angeles.
It hasn't been under 110 all last month or this month. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So for those that are coming in, just a reminder, today we're focusing on Lightroom hacks and tips with Suzanne Mathia. And Susan, did you want to introduce yourself and talk about what we're going over today?
Sure. Okay, so my name is Suzanne Mathia. I'm a professional landscape and nature photographer. I also teach workshops, photography workshops, and I'm an educator. I do classes in Lightroom and Photoshop, both in person and online. I'm also an Adobe community expert. I've been doing professional photography for about 14 years now.
Nice.
Worked a lot with Arizona Highways and their photo workshops. And now I'm basically on my own doing my own workshops. And as I say, teaching online and just being as involved in everything to do with Lightroom and Photoshop as I can.
Excellent. Yeah, so Lightroom hacks and tips today.
Hacks and tips.
Quick run through. I did show them before, but I'll just say hello. There's Tommy from Sweden. Good to see you here.
Wow.
Patricia from Monroe, Ohio. And Bob Stein, who's friends on Facebook. Greetings from Round Rock, Texas. Temperature is 90.
Oh, that's nice and cool. Probably more humid than me, though.
Nice and cool, she says.
Nice and cool.
All right, well, we got a lot to go over. So I'm going to share your screen now.
Okay, I will move my...
That's right.
There we go.
Okay, ready? Okay, very good. So I can see your screen. Looks good.
There we go. Okay, so there's been a whole lot of new wonderful features in Lightroom and Photoshop, but Lightroom and Lightroom Classic over the last 6 months to a year. All sorts of wonderful things with masking and just generative fill and all those wonderful things. But I got to thinking that there's been a lot of videos and a lot of tutorials and a lot of information on that. And I think we've forgotten sometimes that there's a lot of stuff in Lightroom and what I call old stuff in Lightroom that either we've forgotten about or didn't even realize was there. So I thought I'd take this opportunity today to go through some of that older stuff. And then also there's a couple of little hacks that I found, cool, which just kind of makes it a bit interesting to play around with some different techniques and different overlays and just different things that we can do with Lightroom. Something a bit different, something a little bit out of the ordinary, and maybe some stuff that you'd forgotten about or maybe didn't even know about. So so I figured we'd just go over that. There are some, I think Drew has put a link in the, will put a link in the chat for some what I call Lightroom goodies, which are some of the examples that I've created. So as we're going through some of this stuff with overlays and panel end marks and templates and that sort of thing, there's some examples in there for you so you can learn to create some on your own, or you can just use mine. You're more than welcome to.
And just to let you know, I put that in the event page on Facebook, and I will make sure that this is in the description underneath the YouTube recording afterwards.
That's great. So once we finished, if you want to go in there and start playing with those, you can start using those as a template and maybe making your own, or as I say, using the ones that I've given you. So I figured we'd just start at the beginning and start with the basics and just go over a few things that might have been forgotten. So what we're going to do is go into the library panel, and then you'll notice up in the top left-hand corner, there's nothing up there right now. But if you right-click on that, you can go to Edit Identity Plate. And then this allows you to put your own personalized identity plate in there, which could be your name, the name of your company. You can also use a graphical plate. So if you have something like from Photo Logo or one of those companies, or if you've created your own, you can use a graphical identity plate. But I just created my own personalized identity plate, and I can just go in there and just put in my name. Whoops, I can't spell my name, but I could put in my name.
I think you're just missing the A behind your last name.
Oh, there we go. All right. So this will also be a spelling test. There we go. Suzanne Mathia Photography.
I'm not good at typing.
Yeah, the funny part is that it was all in here when I set this up, and now it's of course disappeared, but that's okay. But then you've got the option, of course, to change your font. So one of my favorite fonts and one of my ones that I use all the time is called Syncopate. So I'm going to use that, and I like just the regular, and I'm just going to give it maybe a little bit more size. And now we've got Suzanne Mathia Photography up there in the top left-hand corner. So you, as I say, yeah, you can customize that to whatever you want. And as I say, if you have multiple identities, like, so you've got your wedding photography business, or you've got a storm chasing photography business, or a pet photography business, you can always change that. And it's very easy to go backwards and forwards and change it just by right clicking and then just going into the identity that you want to have up there. Great. You can also change the color and the lettering and the font and everything else, but it just makes it a little bit more personalized.
Sure.
And this is considered what they call an identity plate, and it will come into use later on as well when we go through a few of the other things. Also, too, up in the top right-hand corner, you've got your headings for your library, develop, map, book, slideshow, web, and everything else. You notice my web isn't there. But if you right-click on that in that area, if there are certain modules that you just never use, and one of mine is web, I've never used it, never want to use it, probably will never use it. So instead of having it take up space on there, just by right-clicking in this area, I can uncheck it, and now web has disappeared, which makes it really handy. And I can also change, if I go back over into here, into my edit identity plate, because I've already set it up, I have the option here on the right-hand side to also change the font on that. So let's go ahead and change that to Syncopate too, to keep everything simple. There we go. And I don't like the bold, so I'm going to do regular. And then I want the to highlight the particular module that I'm in a certain color. So I gave it this sandstone color here. You might call it orange, but when you live in Arizona, it's sandstone. So when I go to develop, that's now that. When I go to library, that's now highlighted in that as well.
And just to remind people, where do they access this option from?
Okay, so if you go up to the top right-hand corner, right now, if you haven't changed it, it probably just says Lightroom Classic up there. You just right-click, and Lightroom Classic will be the default, Adobe Photoshop Lightroom Classic. If you right-click, then you can go into a personalized one, and then that will appear there.
Great.
And you can go, and if you want to change it yet again, you just go down to Edit Identity Plate, and that's where you can go ahead and edit it.
Looks good.
Cool. So it just makes it a little bit more personal. Also, too, when you get into, as I say, doing print module, and if we go into the slideshow and various other things, you can have your identity plate show up on the slideshow, and it just makes it more personalized, and it looks good. Okay, and we've changed our font colors, we've changed our identity plate. And then, as I say, we up here, we can decide if we want to, if we'd never used the book module, we can get rid of that, although I do use it. If you don't use the web module, you can get rid of that. So you can customize this up here. You can also customize your panels. You've got your panels. You'll notice that the panels are different in the library module and the develop module, the map module, the book module. Every time you go into a different module in Lightroom, your panels will change slightly, and they're going to be specific to that particular module that you're in. In the library module here, you'll notice that we have the catalog, which is all our photographs. So that's everything this particular Lightroom catalog knows about. And generally speaking, we want to make sure that we only have one Lightroom catalog. There are exceptions to that. Like I said before, if you have two very specific types of businesses that you work in, you might want to keep those separate. Like if you have a wedding photography business, and then you have, a pet photography business, and you're never going to be necessarily looking for one inside the other. So that might be a time to have two separate catalogs. But most of the time you want to just have one catalog, and it doesn't make any difference how big that catalog is. It's going to work exactly the same. So in your folders up here, this is going to tell you all the images that you have in this particular catalog. And then following down, this is all your folders. So I have my Macintosh hard drive showing up here. I also have these various drives because I have images spread over numerous drives because I've got over 200,000 images. So instead of getting the drives and just getting them bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, what I do is I divide my drives up alphabetically. So I have my drive 1 is going to be my A through F images. I have my drive 2 is going to be G through H images, and so on and so forth. So instead of having to just keep getting a bigger drive and move everything onto that bigger drive, I can just keep dividing my alphabet up. And if I add another drive, I'll just move A through F to A through G, and then keep going through there, and then I can add another drive to it.
And can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's great. I see that you have 4 drives. Now, are the 4 drives separate, or are they like stacked in that type of system? I forgot the name of what that system is.
I don't use it. What you're thinking of, a Drobo or a NAS?
NAS.
Yeah, no, it's and it's just a bunch of what they call a bunch of drives. So yeah, no, they're all independent drives, and they're not in a particular.
I was gonna say that's I think a better option, because I once tried to tutor. I was supposed to be tutoring Lightroom, and then she had a NAS. This woman had a NAS system.
Lightroom doesn't really like working on a network drive, on network drives. It can, and it can be done, but it's a bit of a, what they call in England, a faff. So it's a bit of a problem. So what I prefer to do is just have an independent array of drives.
Great.
So I've got 4, actually I have 6 drives plus my internal drive. So like I said, every time that I start to fill one up, then I can just change the alphabet, and I just move a few over to the new drive, and I can just keep going on and on and on.
Maybe I'll do that. You just give me a great idea. Maybe I will
Cool.
get another drive, and then have, say, my photos on one drive and all my digital art on another drive.
You could do that. Yeah. And then they would both be contained within the same catalog, so they're easily searchable, but you would have them separated out. Yeah. So that's another way to do it as well. The only disadvantage to doing it this way is, you notice that I have a whole lot of folders on a whole lot of drives that just keep scrolling and 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 scrolling. And so that can get a bit much.
And Bob uses 4 separate drives as well.
Right. So, you know, in order to make this a little bit more manageable, it's just a question of a couple of little keystrokes. So if you just, on this drive one up here, if you just hit Command, you can just collapse all of those really quickly. And it just makes it easier to say, it's like, okay, I just know I need to be in drive 2, or I know I just need to be in drive 1. And then you just don't have that unwieldy list of folders coming through. And then the other advantage is if you use collections, and I do suggest you do, is that it's very easy to get down to your collections, because all your folders are compressed, and then your collections are right here. And then it's just real easy to see your collections.
Good.
Another little tip that you can do in here that we forget about, because Lightroom comes out with all this, you know, magical, wonderful stuff, and we go with the big whiz bang, and then we forget the little details. And one of the little details, as they did, is now we've got favorites, and we've got a search in the folders. So if I wanted to just go to a folder in here, I can just start typing my folder, and well, it should. If I typed it correctly, there we go. And it would go straight to my downloads folder. Or if I've got another one for, let's say, Navajo.
And when did they introduce this search?
That's been in there for a while. But like I said, it's one of those things that it's probably about 3 updates ago that we get so excited about the fancy new stuff that we forget about all these little old things.
That are very helpful.
So that makes it really easy to find what you're looking for very quickly.
Great.
Another thing that you can do now, I better get rid of that, otherwise it's not going to let me do it. Another thing that you can do now is color code your folders. So if I have a folder that I know I'm going to go to, I can't imagine going to Aerosmith very often, but you never know. So I can right click it, and I can add a color label to that. I can say, okay, that's red.
Now, is that a concert or a place that you went to?
That is a group. I used to, be a groupie for way back in my in my youth. Cool. But let's say you're working on a couple of folders here, and you're just going backwards and forwards between each one of them. So let's say I've been doing a lot of work on Caddo Lake. I can go ahead and add a color label to that. That's red, and I'm going to go from Caddo Lake to Canyon X. So I can add a color label to that, yellow. So it just makes it really easy when I'm scrolling through my folders that I can go to the red one, and I can scroll down here without having to read each one to figure out where I'm at. It's like, oh, my red one. Okay, that's Caddo Lake. I want to go and explore that. Or I want to explore my, my Canyon X. So you can go ahead and color label these things. You can keep them permanently. So the ones you use a lot, you can use the red, or you can use the purple, or you can use the green, or you can just use it temporarily. Because sometimes when I'm going through images, I'm jumping between different folders. And especially if it's different folders on different drives, it makes it much easier for me to switch from one to the next, to the next, to the next.
Sure.
So you can find your favorite folders, and you can also find folders by using a color label. Another little trick that we forget about too is if you've got a lot of what I call nested folders here. So some people, you'll notice I don't have that because I don't have them on purpose. But let's say you had a category here called landscapes. And then inside landscapes, you have Arizona landscapes, or landscape sunset, or landscape sunset, or Milky Way shots, or whatever else. And they're just nested and nested and nested. The descriptions of those folders get wider and wider and wider and wider, and we can't see them. So we can pull this over, but it only goes so far, and it just might not be far enough. But if you hit the Alt or Option key, you can drag those all the way over as far as you want. And as I say, a lot of people don't realize that. Where that gets really handy as well is if we go up to the Develop module, and you have a little bit of space here to change your exposure on an image, change your contrast on an image. But you can also do the same thing here. Hit your Command or Control, hit your Alt or Option key, and you can drag. Hold on.
If it lets you grab it, right?
Yeah, it's not letting me grab it. Why isn't it doing that? Hold on. It's because we're live. There we go. You can drag that way over, and now you've got a lot more infinite control over exposure than you had before. It's just kind of a neat little trick that
I don't think
sometimes
I've ever seen anyone teach that. That's good.
there you go. That's what I tell you. It's this forgotten stuff or stuff that you just never even bothered with. It's just little stuff, but it's handy.
It's too bad that it doesn't enlarge the curve, though, the tone curve down below. Like you would think that when you do that, it would make the tone curve larger,
right.
Small in the middle.
But you do have the with the tone curve, you do have the point. So you can play around with the point curve, and you get some pretty good control over that. Let me just move that back again. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I have this highlighter up here.
And you do have to hold Option, correct, when you pull
it's Alt or Option, depending if it's Windows or Mac. Yeah. So that's another handy little thing. So let's see what we've got. Oh, okay. So while we're in here, the next thing that we've got that most people don't know about, and this has been around since the beginning of time, I'm just going down to the bottom of the panels, okay? Both this panel, and I'll do my trick about reducing this one. There we go. So we'll just go down to the bottom of this panel. And you notice how we have this, what they call a flourish down here. This is a little flourish. This is built into your Lightroom, and that's the default, but you don't have to have that as the default. You can put your logo in there. You can put an identity plate in there if you want to. Or what I do is I put some little handy tips and tricks in there, especially Lightroom shortcuts, the ones that I use all the time. So let's see how we can go about doing that. So in the Lightroom, in your Lightroom goodies panel that I gave you, there are some examples of these that I already built for you and made for you. But you can create your own depending on what you want to do. So let me just get to panel end marks. Okay, so in Windows, it makes it they make it really easy. If you just go to the bottom left or right panel in the library, you can just right-click and select Panel End Marks. Go to the Panel End Marks folder. Save the end mark that you want as a PNG into that folder, and then close your Explorer. And then when you right-click on that panel, you can pick any image you want. And this will make perfect sense in a minute when I show you. On Mac, we have to go into the preferences and presets and do the same thing. We find that panel end marks folder. And if one doesn't exist, you just literally create a new folder and call it panel end marks. And you're going to save a PNG in there, and then close Finder, and then in Lightroom Preferences, you can choose that mark. Now, what the hell is she talking about? Okay, let's figure this out. So one of the end marks that I use is this. So it has all the keyboard shortcuts that I use a lot in Lightroom. So G for the grid room, D for develop, the before and after, the side-by-side, the masks, the overlays, remove, and you can, whatever ones you use a lot, you can pick to put those in there. This has just got a different background on it to make it easier. This one is it's actually a PNG with a transparent background. And I just changed the tone on this so you could see it a little bit better. This one has a black background. But here's something else you can do too. You can always do a little key to your star ratings or your color ratings, and you can just have it right there at the bottom of your end panels. So this is telling you that 1 star means I like it. 2 stars means I really like it. 3 stars is I love it. 4 stars, banger. 5 stars, okay, it's ready for the showcase. And of course, you can change those around as you want. But then we can also use color labels when we're looking at our
various... like a UK type of comment.
What's that?
Banger sounds like a kind of British type of comment.
Oh, right? No, that's just something that my group of photographers, if we want to just say it's just a killer shot, it's banger.
Sure.
And it's very tongue-in-cheek, but yes, it's a banger shot. But you can also do this when you're doing your color labels too. So sometimes I'll color label things as part of a pano. So if I'm bringing in images and I can see that 4 or 5 of them are obviously part of a pano as I'm going through and culling, I'll just mark those with green. If they're part of an HDR, I'll mark those as red. If it needs work, which everything does when it first comes in, I'll mark it as yellow. If it's something I want to put on my website, I might mark it as blue. If it's something that's already in a collection, so if I have a collection set that I have that is everything that goes onto my SmugMug website. So everything on my SmugMug website has a purple color on it. So as I'm going through my images, if I see something that's worthy of putting on my website, but it doesn't have a purple color, I know that it's not already in there. So it's just a way for me to differentiate different images. But this is another thing that you can do for your panel end marks, just to kind of give yourself a little hint as to what's going on. Or the other option is you can put your own logo or company information there. And how do we do that? Okay. So in with a Mac, if we come up to Lightroom preferences, you'll notice if we go up to interface, so that when it opens up, you'll be in the general column, but we want to go up to interface, and then you'll go to panel end marks, which is right here. And right now, small flourish is the default. Okay, that's what comes with Lightroom already. So if you come in here and if you've put those images in your panel end marks folder, you can come in here to see the various panel end marks that you've got. So let's say I said stars and colors. Now you notice it's changed to that one that I just showed you. So now my panel end marks on either side are going to be little hints to stars and colors. I could come up and go back to preferences again. And instead of stars and colors, I will, there we go, choose the grid view. So I've got my little shortcuts here, and those will stay there, and they will stay in each of the individual modules. So as I'm going through, I have all my shortcuts right there and anything I want to do. So that's kind of a nifty little trick that you can customize your interface and see all that kind of neat stuff.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. So as I say, in the goodies bag that I gave you are some examples of these already, but all you need to do is just go into Photoshop or Adobe Express, and you can create these yourself. All you need to do is just save them as a PNG, and that will give the transparency at the background, and then stick them in that folder, and that's where your folder is. And then you can just access those and change those as you wish.
Great.
Cool.
That's good. Yeah.
Any questions on that?
The only question I had was, there's no way to have a separate image that's placed at the bottom on the left and the right. If you
No. Oh, you just want so much, don't you? Like left panel, right panel? No, you get what you get. Okay. So
pretty
but
good,
you can, as I say, you can change them around if needed. But no, I just find that's really handy, especially this. This is the one that I have, is the shortcuts panel, and especially when the new, some of the new stuff comes out with masking and a few other things. It's like, oh, what was that shortcut for that? So it's just a nice little reminder. Even though Lightroom gives it to us up here, it's just easier if you can just see it right there.
Just glance over.
Just glance over, and plus it kind of burns it into your brain a little bit too when we do that. So that's always good. Okay, so we have done that. Let's go into overlays. Now this is something else that's been around for a while too. So I'll go into the library, back over to here again. Okay, and I will just give you some examples of these. Okay, so this is just an image.
And I was going to say, if you want, you can turn off that circle that's on your cursor.
Oh, I have that on sort of so you know where my cursor is, but I'll stop going like this if that would be helpful. Okay. So a lot of times, hopefully, if you're lucky enough, you're doing images for a magazine, or you're doing images for a display, or some kind of presentation, and you know there's going to be an overlay on there. We've always had this, but a lot of people don't even know, is that you have the availability of putting that overlay over your various images, crop your images, or decide which image you want based on that overlay. So here's an overlay for this that I just made. I just created this as a PNG in Adobe Express, actually. And so I could decide which image that I wanted because it works best with that overlay. Here's one I just mocked up for Arizona highways. So if they decided, oh, we really want one of your Lake Powell images for our cover, instead of sending them stuff arbitrarily, I can just do a mock-up of the cover, and I can figure out which image would look best under that. And then, of course, when National Geographic calls, I can do the same thing.
And so, to clarify, the overlays are just the text, correct?
Just the text. Yeah. So let's go back to that. So let's show you how that works. So let's say we're going to take this image. So that was the basic image that I created in Lightroom from a portrait shoot. And I want to have a look and see how it would look. So I can come up to View, and I've got to go to Loop Overlay, and then choose Layout Image. Probably never even saw that was there before.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And so if I go into the Lightroom goodies, which are, let's see, I put them on the desktop. So I put them under faux magazine covers. Okay. So here's one. I don't know what it is yet. So we'll just look at it. There we go. So this is Arizona highways. Okay. And DAM, not a cuss word, digital asset management. So this is just a layout that I had created. So does it look better with that image? Does it look better with that image? Do I want the image to be, I can go into the develop module and say, do I want that image a little less concentrated or a little brighter? So let's go in here and change the exposure up a little bit. And then I can go back to the library module and see how that overlay looks. And that definitely doesn't look right. So I can go back to the develop module again, and I can change the exposure back down. Come in here, and then there's the overlay. So let's look at another one, because that's just one example. So go to View, Loop Overlay, choose Layout Image. And so when you go to choose Layout Image, it's just going to reference to wherever those images may be. So I just happened to create those in that goodies folder. So that was a masthead actually for Arizona highways. But let's do this one, for instance, National Geographic. There we go. So instead of the Afghan girl, I now have this girl, and I can move this around. And I can just see how that would look as an overlay, which is kind of cool. So if you have, like I said, you could have a magazine, you can have an invitation, you can have, any sort of layout, and you can just do a little bit of a graphic over the top. Let's change the image. Okay, so let's say this one looks a little better for what we want to do for National Geographic, or chances are probably we want a landscape image. So there we go. So we can do that National Geographic, and we can just move it over and say, okay, that looks pretty good for our layout. Same thing again. We can come up to View, Loop Overlay, choose Layout. Let's see what we've got now. Okay, here we've got Summit, which would be perfect. So all of these layouts that I've created here, I actually created in Adobe Express. So if you go into Adobe Express and go into templates and go into magazine, it will give you a whole bunch of different magazine templates you can use, and you can obviously change the text and change everything else about it, but it's a good starting place to go to. Then all you do is just right click on it to delete the background and save it as download it as a PNG, and you have your overlay. So you can really play around with those. Most of these I originally created in Photoshop, but I figured I'd go ahead and try it in Adobe Express, and it actually works a lot better in Adobe Express. Plus, they already give you a lot of the templates, so you don't have a lot of thinking to do, which is really great. So would that be a better image? Or would that be a better image? So that's what makes it kind of, so you can create anything you want up in the view loop overlay and just choose whatever layout image you want. So here's one that I created for a wedding. Okay. Obviously not very appropriate, but that might be appropriate.
Yep.
And that definitely is. But then I can tell that I want to move the image around, so I can just use the control key and move the image around, change the text, change whatever. So it just makes it for an interesting overlay. So all you have to do is to say, just create a folder that's available on your desktop or on your computer somewhere. And then you'll just go into view, loop overlay, and you can just choose whatever layout image you want. Makes it kind of interesting.
Great.
Okay.
Nice.
Any questions on that?
No. Just
All right.
Taking it in.
Yep. Okay. It's just something that's been there, I think, since one of the first iterations of Lightroom, and most people don't even know it's there, and it's actually quite fun to play with, especially if you do mock-ups for, magazines and that type of thing. It's really handy. Or if you're doing mock-ups for, which we'll look at in a minute, invitations to a party or a wedding or something like that, and you just want to know what image would look good under there. That's a really interesting way of doing it.
Great.
All right. So we did panel end marks. We did images for the magazine overlay. I forgot what that one was, but we won't even worry about it. Okay. So the other thing is now is in the print module, we've got a lot of things that we can do in the print module. So we're going to clear this image. So loop overlay. We're just going to uncheck layout image, and it just goes away. And we're back to our regular image again. Now, if we go over into the print module, this is where we have some interesting stuff over here too. And this is where you can, a lot of people don't even bother either using the print module in Lightroom at all, or they just simply use it to just set up 8x10 print, hit print, send it on its merry way to the printer and be done with it. But there's a lot you can do in the print module for some interesting layouts. And you can either print to your printer or you can print to a JPEG file, which is what I do quite a bit when I'm in here. I print to a JPEG file, and those are the images that I will put up on social media, because they'll have my name and logo at the bottom without having to put a watermark over the image itself. So what I do on some of these cases is, let's go to, I picked and created a template here, which is called a triptych, and I think this is in your goodies folder too. But if I go into some images here, there we go. So let's say I wanted to do an interesting triptych of jellyfish. So I have a collection that I've created. It just makes it easier if you have a collection and then you take your collection into the print module, because then you don't have 580 images to look through. You say, oh, okay, there's a few of these jellyfish images that I think would look really good as a triptych. I just want to play with those. So I would create a collection for those and then take the collection into the print module. Then I can decide, I've got my template here that I've created under favorites, and I can say, okay, I want that image there. I want that image there. And I want that image there. and say, oh, okay, well, no, wait a minute. Maybe I'll take this one and put that one there, and I'll put this one in the middle. But see how easy it is to just, create these things and put them wherever you want. And if you want to adjust them slightly, just hold the Command key down, and then you can just change how they look inside that cell area there. Now, remember we talked when we first started about our identity plate up here?
Mm-hmm.
So this is another opportunity that you can use your identity plate. So if you come over here on the right side of the print module, you notice it gives you the opportunity to use our identity plate or not. And I've just created one called your name here. But if you go down into the edit, whoa, there we go. Hold on. So you can use your main identity plate. Now you can see where that pops up. Now we have Suzanne Mathia Photography. Okay. But you can change this to whatever you want. So if I come down here and edit that, I can just change this to, I know, jellyfish. There we go. So I can change that to jellyfish, which is kind of cool. I can override the color of that. So I can pick whatever color I want. I would not suggest hot pink, but what I would suggest maybe is to pick one of the colors from the image. Now this works in the develop module as well as in the print module. If you've got this eyedropper tool selected and you go outside of the color range here, you notice that the eyedropper tool disappears. But if you hold down your right mouse key or hold down your key on your trackpad, if you scroll over, now you can keep that eyedropper tool, and now you can select a color from inside the image, which just makes it a little bit more interesting. So we'll do that. We'll say jellyfish. Obviously, that's a little big, so let's move that down. And then, of course, you can change your font and everything else you want to do from there, too. So you can come down here. I don't know why it's buggering around with me today. Here we go. Edit. And then if you wanted to change the font, you can just change the font to anything that you want. There you go. Jellyfish. That's probably not appropriate, but there we go. But it does make it interesting. So up here, so then you can come in and you can put a photo border on if you want. You can do an inner stroke. So you can add a little bit of a stroke. You can change the color of your stroke. Once again, with the eyedropper tool, if you want to take a color from the image, you can do that by holding down your left mouse key as you're scrolling over. And I just selected a color from the image that just makes that a little bit more interesting. And then when you have that, when you have that set up the way you want it, and this is the way you want to print it, you can go ahead and come down here to your print job, and you have two options. One is print to the printer. So I can print this right on my printer and it'll look just like it is, or I can print it as a JPEG file. So when I do that, and I'll go print to file, let's say I'm going to put this on Facebook. You can see I have a number of ones that I do on Facebook. So this is going to be my jelly triptych. And there it goes. And then it prints. Well, it will be there. So there we go. So there is my jelly triptych. So I can now put that up on social media just like that.
Nice.
Which is super cool. Okay. Let me just get rid of that. Okay, so let's do another example of what we can do in there. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. So we're in print. Okay, so here's a 4-up. So I'm in the print module and I want to go over to a new template. Here we go. So I'm going to go over to a new template, and this one is called 4 wide. And you'll notice I've got a bunch of images down here. So if I select all those images, I now have a template that I can use. Now here is where you can start moving things around. You can obviously change the size of the paper that it's on or the dimensions that it's on. Right now we have 11 by 6. Let's do an 11 by 14, let's say. Big difference.
Sure.
Okay, then you can hold the command key and you can move this around wherever you want. So if I just want to move that a little bit that way, this one is fine the way it is. Let's move that one up a little bit. And we can come around, whoops, print, there we go. Okay, it's typical that it does this.
Yeah.
So we do 4 up. Anyway, you can see what I'm saying. For some reason, it's just going berserk. It must be the Microsoft glitch today that's doing it. So yeah, absolutely. But that's all within the print module. Let's see, we can do, okay, I've got one here called Have a Supai Plunge, which is a fun one. So you can create these yourself by going into the print module, picking up your whatever dimensions you want, and you can kind of fine tune this after the fact if it doesn't look right. But you're going to decide how many columns you want, what size of the template you want, so you can start putting these individual pieces in there. So this Have a Supai one, for instance, I can select all of these. It's not going to do it for me. Okay, we're going to do this manually. But I've got a whole series of images that I took of one of our guides.
Oh, that's fun.
Jumping off Have a Supai. But instead of, just doing a bunch of different images, there we go. You can just do it. Forget that one. You can just do it as a whole series like this. And this is where you put your identity plate and just call it whatever you want. Have a Supai Plunge. But basically, that's what it looks like when you're done.
Oh, that's fun.
Which is cool. But this is all within the print module. As like I said, a lot of people just totally ignore the print module and forget that they can do all this neat stuff with it. So when I'm doing my images to put onto social media, I will just go ahead and take an image. It doesn't matter which one it is. Let's say this one, for instance. And that's just what was left over. I don't want that. So let's go ahead and...
The last image reminded me of like flip books.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So we can just come in here and we'll just do let's just do maximum size on that one. Okay, so maximum size on that one. I don't want to rotate to fill. Obviously, my page size is wrong here, so I can come down to my custom file dimensions. Right now we have 11 by 6, which isn't working. So let's try 11 by 14. Okay. And then we can just make the image bigger. So you got your cell size here. So I can bring this up. And I can change the bottom menu, change the top menu, margin rather, sorry. And then once again, I can put my identity plate on there. So here's Suzanne Mathia Photography. And I can just move that. I can just move that. There we go. I can just move that down there. Change the scale of that.
And there's a couple comments I wanted to.
Sure. And then that's the way I go ahead and put my images. I would change the paper size a little bit so the margins aren't quite so big. But you have full control over that. You can also change the background color of the paper, your page background color. In this particular case, I would choose white, but you could choose black, which doesn't look good at all. Or you can use that same trick with the eyedropper tool and just pick a nice sort of shade of that pretty blue color from the image itself and do that. So the reason I do that is so I've got my name on there. It's easily identifiable, but I don't have it scrawled all over the image itself.
And
So you had some questions?
no, not questions, comments.
Oh,
So Patricia says, super stuff here.
cool.
And Jennings Ford says, I'm glad to be taken back to remind me what I've ignored for so long.
Good. Exactly. That's
Nice.
exactly what I wanted. All right. So let's see what else we've got. So now we're getting into a little bit of a hack.
We got about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll do about 5 minutes on this, and then we can do some Q&A if we want to.
Sure.
But this is truly a hack. So if we come into, let's go into an image here. Okay. Obviously, we don't want Suzanne Mathia photography on there, so I'm going to turn that off. I have to remember where I hit all this
time in Arizona, right?
What's that? Yes, it is. I'm just pretending it's Christmas time in Arizona.
And it doesn't feel so hot, right?
Yeah. Hold on just a minute. I'm just trying. Oh, I know where I put those. I think I hid them in. Hold on. Sorry about that. I've hidden things all over the place. So images for overlay, I've got that. Here we go. Oh, I moved them. Okay, that was silly on my part, but the previews are still there. So, okay. Actually, you know what? I think I may have screwed this up. So forgive me on this one. We're probably not going to be able to do these because I inadvertently moved them to another location. And by the time I find them, our 5 minutes will be up. But what it is if you have textures or overlays or things that you have used before in the print module, if you go to identity plate, and then you use a graphical identity plate. So let's say we're going to use identity plate, but it's not going to be Suzanne Mathia photography anymore. We're going to come down here and edit. And we're going to use a graphical identity plate. This is where you can go and locate the file that I have moved. Okay. Let's see if any of them are there. Textures. Yes. Okay. So I've moved them off here, but let's say this one, for instance, and you can say choose. Okay. So now you actually have a graphic, not just a signature graphic, but a graphic, which could be a texture or an overlay or something like that. And you can overlay it straight on top of your image and just change the scale and change the opacity to it. And then print to file from there. So let's see if I can, now I've found where I hidden them. Let's see if I can do one quick example. Not a good example. But anyway, let's just try that, for instance. So let's go over here. We can change the opacity. Just bear with me on the fact that this isn't the best example, but you can see that you can use a graphic, overlay it on an image, and then you can print the image accordingly. And obviously I would crop that.
Kind of like the closest thing to layers in Photoshop.
Exactly. And that's why it's a little bit of a hack. And I apologize for not having that quite ready to go. I moved some stuff around this morning and now it's come back to bite me. But you can kind of see what it is. So if you have a graphic that has some texture on it, let's see if we can find another one real quick. I'm just having fun, aren't I? Okay, edit. All right, let's see if we can find another graphic real quick. See, okay, this is an interesting one. So that's got some sort of texture and rusty texture on it. So I could choose that one, say okay. And there we go. So you can see how you can add a kind of an interesting texture to an image. So when you go ahead and print that, where are we going to print that to? The desktop? I'll just call it test just for now. But when you print that image, it now has that little bit of an overlay on it. So I did call it test, didn't I? Print to file. Print to file. Desktop. Test. Should be there. If it's not, I'm blaming that on Microsoft too. There it is. Okay. So now you can see we have an image that has that interesting overlay on it.
Yeah, that's nice.
Kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, it looks like a nice print.
It
Might be
does.
like a lithograph.
So this is something I discovered. Actually, it was somebody had shown this to me in Lightroom Mobile. And I thought, well, I wonder if this will work with Lightroom Classic as well. And sure enough, it does. But to let you know, you can also do this with the watermarking feature in Lightroom Mobile as well. So if you have some interesting textures, I mean, obviously, if we have Photoshop, we can do this in Photoshop in 2 seconds flat. But it's kind of neat to see what you can do in Lightroom when you just kind of start playing around with a few little hacks and few little tricks. So I hope that'll kind of give you something to go on.
Right. And I was going to say that's a good way to look at Lightroom in a different way and play
exactly.
in a way.
Yeah, do a little bit of this overlay. Do the mock-ups for cards and magazine covers and various other things, and using the print module, in a way that we didn't really use it before.
Right. And, we have a little bit of time. So besides, these features, did you want to just, show quickly, I guess, the new, that new generative AI kind of retouching capability in Lightroom now?
Sure. I hadn't planned on it, but we can do that.
Yeah, just that one.
All right. So let's see what we've got here.
Doesn't seem to be a lot of questions, so I thought I'd.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Sure. All right, so we're in the develop module. Okay, so one of the things I like to do, especially with the new generative AI stuff, is if I want to get rid of, so we've got generative AI here and then object aware. And generally speaking, I'll just go ahead and click on both of those. If I'm just removing dust spots, I leave the generative AI off because it's going to start consuming credits and we don't need to do that. And removing dust spots doesn't usually need the expertise of generative AI. But let's say, for instance, I wanted to get rid of these poor little sheepies here. So with object aware, I can just come over here and it's just going to mask that off pretty well. And we'll just say apply and generative remove. We'll get in there and ta-da, gone. Wow. And this used to take us, probably be a good idea to get rid of. Well, actually, it's done a pretty good job in getting rid of the shadow as well. But I just happen to have this particular image up. These sheep are actually quite interesting. They have 4 horns. Wow. So I was actually doing a presentation the other day for Navajo lands. And
you came across these in Arizona?
Yeah. They're called churro sheep, which has got absolutely nothing to do with my presentation today, but it's really interesting. And they came over with the Spaniards, and the Navajo raised these sheep now. And most of the Navajo wool with weavings and things is done from these churro sheep, but they have these amazing horns, which is, they're just incredible. Wow. But let's say we didn't like those horns. Poor things. Let's see if we can get rid of those. And generally speaking, I like to do things one at a time or relatively small, so it's not quite so obvious. It takes a bit of the heavy lifting. So I did a pretty darn good job. Let's do this. So they've been working thousands of years to do those horns, and I can just come along and just get rid of them in no time flat. So generally speaking, when I'm working on generative AI in Lightroom, it's mostly to remove stuff. But I suppose I could always add stuff. But
so the thing I was going to say that's great about it is, you do that large selection around the horn, and then it reads the image, and you'll notice that it not only, built that texture of the fur,
Yeah.
but it kept the edge of where that
Yeah.
fur ends.
Yeah.
So it didn't like
Yeah.
bleed off into,
Yeah.
in an abstract
It's
way.
incredibly good. I won't say the only, but one weakness that I found is that if you're doing anything that's close to an edge, it really has a hard time with that.
It bleeds and kind
It
of looks
it
like a
it ble
watercolor or
it
something.
it just can't find things the way it did. So, one suggestion that I have is if you think you're gonna be doing some generative of AI around edges of an image, is to work on an uncropped image first and then crop it afterwards.
Good
Because
idea.
if you start getting too close to an edge, it just doesn't do a really good job. And obviously it's still in its infancy, but it does a fabulous job. And anytime we don't have to go over to Photoshop for something, I'm all for it.
Sure.
Uh,
Sure.
and it really does do a great job.
Excellent. Yeah. So this is really great. And
Cool.
as the comments said previously, super stuff here by Patricia. And Jennings said, I'm glad to be taken back to remind me what I have ignored for so long, except for this, which is new, the generative AI.
Yeah, it's all brand new. But this will be old one day too. We'll be looking
Right.
back on this in a few years ago. Remember when we had generative AI and it was just starting?
Right.
You know?
You'll be able to say, get rid of the bottom horns.
Yeah.
And it'll like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we won't even have to start drawing on the thing. It'll just know what we want to do. So
great.
well, I hope I've given you a few ideas to play. And as I say, do go into that goodies package that I gave you, because you can use those, but it'll also maybe give you some ideas of some other stuff to use. And especially go over that that overlay with textures and borders and frames and that type of thing. You'll find that might just tweak your creativity a little bit. And let me know. You can, all my contact information is available. So
that's what I was going to do now.
Yeah, let me know what you come up with. I'd love to see it.
So yeah, so once again, you can get the Lightroom goodies there, which I will be posting that with the link underneath in the description of the YouTube recording, as well as on the event page on Facebook. So you'll get that, be able to just click on that link to get to it. And then you can follow Suzanne on her website, Suzanne Mathia photography.com. And then on Facebook at facebook.com/Suzanne.Mathia, which is just like mine. I'm not sure like what other people did, but that's how I set mine up too for my profile, just a dot between the name. And then she has a Facebook page. So facebook.com/Lightroom Whisperer. And then to be aware, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my YouTube, which is where the recording will be, on youtube.com/@DrewCav. That's DrewCav on YouTube. And then I'm not sure if people know of the drama that is going on Facebook, but real quick summary, the original Photoshop, well, first we had a Photoshop and Lightroom group that got to 445,000 members. And then due to a glitch, it removed me as the creator of the group. I had to be added back as an admin, but it left me open to being removed by any admin if they went rogue. So I ended up closing that group, moving to another group, and then running that for a few years. And that one built all the way up to 390,000. And then I ended up now having to create another group, a new group, Photoshop Lightroom group, same name, because we've gotten a few warnings about, and I think it's bots false flagging it, where they are giving us violations for intellectual property violations, and then they lower the group quality status and say we could lose the group, it could be deleted. So what I'm getting to is, please join the new Photoshop and Lightroom group, facebook.com/groups, Photoshop and Lightroom group. So please come join that one before the other one gets taken down by Facebook. And if you are into AI art and digital art, please join the AI art and digital art group, facebook.com/groups, AI art, digital art. And it looks like we have some comments. So we got Bob, fun stuff. Thanks. I've forgotten about the print module. Patricia says your generosity is appreciated.
Oh, my pleasure.
And Lupus says, Susan and Andrew, thank you so much for the great tips.
Thanks, Lupus.
And Irene says, thank you both. Yep.
Yep.
So yes,
Appreciate it.
so as always, keep an eye out on either of our profiles on Facebook for any other live events or presentations we might be doing. And then if you are in those groups, keep an eye on the top featured posts. That is where we always post the information for live events coming up or contests. We might be having a contest in the AI art and digital art group soon enough.
Fun.
So thank you so much, Suzanne. It was great.
Oh, my pleasure. Always fun. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, keep it going. Keep it going. It's great. So thanks everyone for watching. So keep your eye on the link to the recording on YouTube. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.